Hello, hello. Welcome, folks. My name is Chris. This is the One Great Work Warriors. We got Brandon, Derek, Jerry, Jim, and somewhere out there in the ether, our man Rick couldn't be with us today, but he'll be back when we can. And today, we're bringing up a grave gavel topic. As you can see, I'm standing here in the virtual courtroom, and today we're going to talk about legality and morality, how those two topics intertwine into one. And to start this topic off, I'm going to hand it off to Brandon to get things going. Thanks.
Thank you for that, as always. And a very interesting topic. One that is very, very old. The disarray from morality to legality. And the reason why I put the disarray, because there's a confusion, there's a disorientation, there's a disconnect, there's a level of uncertainty. There's a mudding of morality, and we've shifted from a point where people had a somewhat idea of what true morals are, to now we have man's law, we have legality. So people are putting legality over morality. And how this idea came to mind, beginning of the year, when all of this Epstein stuff was coming out, and everyone thought heads were going to roll, everyone thought that, we were going to see people going to jail, and, we were finally going to get justice. And I was watching, like one of the, videos on, people who set up stings to catch, predators. And he ended up catching a predator. Of course, this dude is, very big time, very well known. But as he is questioning this sick, predator, this sick individual, he says, but it's illegal. That's how he started off. He put legality first. And I'm thinking, what are you doing, man? I'm like, why? No, it's immoral. It's immoral. You should be saying that first. That's the crux right there. It's immoral, because there are plenty of things that are legal that are immoral, and there are plenty of things that are illegal that are moral. And that right there kind of struck a chord, like it kind of struck a nerve in me, because, like this individual, like you know, he's caught a lot of sick individuals, and for him to just say that, because he's always saying it's illegal. And I'm like, no, that's not the reason why, we shouldn't be doing this. It's immoral. It's morally wrong. And I wanted to bring this up because, we talk about morality all the time. And, we talk about how natural law and rights. But when you see the court system, this whole justice system, I think that has been one of the main primary sources on why there has been an obfuscation when it comes to what true morality is, and what true rights and true principles are. Because we can go back into how the yesteryears. You had things like the code of Hammurabi, the code of Justinian. You had the Decalogues. So we always had this notion of law. How rather it be, divine law, how natural law, or man-made law. We've always had this notion of what law is. And what it means is something that is laid down, something that which can't, something that can't be changed. So when we look at, like the Decalogue, the Code of Hammurabi, like the Code of Justinian, like all of these, codes that, supposedly, like govern conduct, that govern behavior. And we look at all of those, and these are nothing more but, predecessors of to what we have now. We have one man or a small group of people who can dictate what morality is. They can script and scribble, write things down on paper, and then people believe that. That's what legality is. So we hear the stories of, the first lawbreaker. You know how Moses. Again, I think that's symbolically saying man is not there to arbitrate law. You can write down law, he'll you can encode it on whatever you want. But when you think you can change what true law is, when you think you can change what true right and wrong are, then that's when you yourself are actually the ones who are transgressing and violating the true natural moral laws. And then two, I would also even go even further to say that all of these depictions that we see, like with good and evil, God versus Satan, those are also depictions too of not just of right and wrong, but natural law versus man's law. Because when you look at everything that natural law is hell about, it's all of the positive aspects that can lead to a fruitful society and evolution. But when you look at man's law and what legality is, it's all based on subjective, opinions. It's all based on, hey, did the judge get laid the night before? How did the judge get their drugs the night before? How did the DA, he'll get some pussy or some dick the night before? So it's always changing. You can have two people go to the court for the same exact charges and the same exact thing, and I know this personally because I've been in this, and the outcomes are very, very different. So there's really no objectivity to legality and man's law and the whole court system. It's not a system that's based on fairness. It's not a system that's meant for everyone. It's a system based on the haves and the have-nots. Those who are empowered, those who are in the system, those who are in the authority, those are the ones who have, and those are the ones who have the power to legislate, to write things down, to change other people's lives. And the have-nots, those are the ones who go into the courtrooms, who are ignorant, who don't know nothing, who can't defend themselves, and they're taken advantage of. This goes back thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, so this whole, legal system has been like one of the forefronts to people abdicating true moral principles because it blurs the boundaries of what true right and wrong are. Then it blurs other boundaries when it comes to higher forms of thought. And what this has done, I really do think that this has skewed our psyche, because of course it's all rooted in the belief in authority. But when you look at our collective unconscious, because that's what it is, it's a collective unconscious, and you see how rooted it is, how like in this thinking, how rooted it is, oh, this person is a judge. Oh, hell, this person is a good person. Oh, this person is a lawyer. Oh, this person, it's like the whole framework on how we look at these people is fucked up because most people will see a judge and they think that's someone who's to be respected. Most people see a DA or an attorney and they think that these are individuals who should be respected. These are some of the lowest motherfuckers on the earth. I mean, I would put them just a little bit above, order followers, but judges, attorneys, lawyers, they are some of the scum of the earth. They are, they are like a cunt hair above, order followers. Like just scum of the earth. But yet people have such a, high praise for them. And this is something that really needs to be talked about. Because we still have some bullshit laws here in the States, that are like hundreds and hundreds of years old. We even have some laws that say, the age of consent in certain states is still like 16. It's like what the fuck are we doing, man? What the fuck are we doing? Are we still playing this subjective bullshit? So, hell, I just wanted to bring that to the topic of discussion. And I'll pass it on to I'll pass it to Derek.
Thank you, sir. And yeah, I'm glad I get to go next because you touched upon things where I had some notes written down. I actually copied and pasted a wonderful post by Brandon Martin. Shout out to Cubbyhole and Seed Academy. But just real quick, I mean, you're talking about authority and natural law, and obviously the authors, ones that write man's law, that are sometimes in line or a mockery of natural law, it boils down to this moral relativistic paradigm or dilemma, whatever. So, real quick, there are three prime evils. One is the belief in authority, which is an illusion existing only within the imbalanced psyche, based entirely upon violence and built upon the erroneous and dogmatic belief that some people are masters who have the moral right to issue commands, while others are slaves who have the moral, quote unquote, obligation to obey their, quote unquote, masters, which is why we evoke, the concept of anarchy, which literally means no masters, no slaves, right? So, onto moral relativism, which is the dangerous belief that human beings can arbitrarily decide which rights people have or do not have based upon their own whims, desires, and perceptions. And I'll throw in, time, place, and space, because you could cross one invisible line and be able to do something like have sex with pigs or whatever. There's some weird ass laws that are still in effect that protect weird ass behavior. Why? Uh, So moral relativism, it also includes the belief that human beings are capable of delegating rights that do not exist or revoking rights that do not exist. And why is this? Probably because a lot of people are ignorant to natural law. The willful disregard of the knowable science and objective knowledge of the governing dynamics that determine the consequences of human behavior, also known as natural law, cosmic law, universal law, right? It goes well beyond just the golden rule, which is, do unto others as you would like to be done unto yourself. There's so much more to it than that, and people get caught up in too much nuance as well. And there's a lot of religious fucking dogma tied to that as well, unfortunately. People want to turn the other cheek and get slapped harder. Let me know how that works for you. So, anyways, going into natural law, and please, people, if you haven't checked out Mark Passio's magnum opus on this, y'all need to hit the books on that. It's 9 hours long. And actually, Nathan Riddick just produced a written transcript of that with the slides intact as well. Actually did just a plain text translation of it because I wanted to learn natural law more. Geez, like 6 years ago. Anyways, so why is it important to understand natural law? Because if we understand that, we understand our rights a little bit more, and we could be more in tune with the universe and be aligned to it, so we don't cause self-inflicted suffering and suffering upon other people. And there are transgressions. If we just understand this, what causes harm to ourselves and other people, I'm reading from Mark Passio's slide. This is number 45. Every harmful action that a human being is capable of taking is a form of theft. Some form of property is always being stolen when a wrongdoing is committed. Like life is a form of property, rights are a form of property, freedom is a form of property. And we've pretty much done segments on these three things as well. I mean, what is a right? That was, our first one with the One Great Warriors. And we did several videos about freedom. So anyways, what are wrongdoings exactly? Mark Passio does a great job of just consolidating, definitively, just things that boil down to theft. But we can break it down to murder or assault, rape, theft, trespass, and coercion. These are all causing harm to other people. So how do we course correct and take right action? I mean, there's been philosophies that speak about this for eons. Take it to the Eightfold Path. I think this is more of a Taoist thing or something like that. A boot, I forget. But I do not forget, the main crux of what's important in regards to right mentality, being your daily mindset, right perception, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right behavior. And it's always going to be a work in progress for people, including myself. I'm not always the best communicator, or, like, we have to take these things in stride and, just learn to strengthen our weak points. And yeah, part of putting these things into practice is applying them to the real world and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't, and being able to like reconcile and alchemize things like on the spot. The more we do that, the more in harmony we're going to be with each other. Even if wrongdoings are committed and people are honest and open and are holding their boundaries, meaning they're able to have those divine pillars standing firm between them in regards to the sacred, sorry, masculine and feminine, in regards to do no harm but take no shit. So we have to have that boundary of self-defense, right? Otherwise it's just, people are just going to be taken advantage of, and people that take advantage of those people that aren't put in check think it's okay, and so they're going to continue to perpetuate these things, kind of like what we see in Europa and in the UK right now. Police officers right now are more concerned about being labeled a racist than actually uh, preventing crimes and murder and rape and shit like that. Can you fucking believe this shit? You know? Anyway, so Chris Nelson, you got to check out evolveconsciousness.org, because he gets into so much of these dynamics as well, with stellar slides to go with it. I added one in regards to causality, consciousness, choice, and the trivium. So it's like, fuck around and find out. You know what I mean? It's like the law of attraction, cause and effect. Are you able to be the cause point of your desired effects in life? And guess what? If you're operating from that negative or harmful aspect, it's going to come back around to you. So things to consider. So yeah, it might take a village. And I know people think like, oh, like you're into anarchy, like we'll solve all the world's problems or whatever. Like, we don't got all the answers, but we know for a fact that, you know, it's more chaotic under democide, or, you know, gubernare, mind control, government. You know, shit ain't working out. How fucking chaotic do people need to realize things are in order to get their heads out of the government's ass, that kind of stuff. Especially when we're paying through the nose and out the ass for all these fucking laws and regulations and shit like that. How much money do you have to give to all these countries, by the way? Is this, what kind of fucking charity is this? Anyways, because we're just being taxed to death. If we earn something, if we have to move somewhere, if we, you know, sales tax, inflation tax, capital gains tax, you know, all these taxes, it because it falls under the legal rights for them to do so or whatever. Hey, not everyone's so fluent in legalese, right? Or admiral law, Black's law, maritime law. You know, we're fucking strangled by all this red tape that they've created, and it's fucking by design, of course, right? So I feel like I'm kind of rambling a little bit, so I'm gonna pass it off to Jim.
All right. Thanks, guys. So, yeah, legality versus morality comes up a lot. Um, so over the winter, I was posting a lot on Instagram about marijuana, and it's just it wasn't really about marijuana, it was about right and wrong. Like how could something be right in one place and wrong in another, right? So say the marijuana laws changed in New York where it's legal now, and then just across the border in Pennsylvania, it's wrong, right? So that was the point that I kept trying to make was that's the problem, like that we believe that that can be like a thing, that the same exact action could be either right or wrong depending on what invisible line you're standing on. And even one post I made was like you everyone knows the saying like two wrongs don't make a right, but when it comes to like that situation, how could two rights make a wrong, right? If smoking or growing weed on your property or just anywhere in it's your right to do that. It's never been wrong. It's a plant that grows in nature. And I personally am not someone who smokes a lot. I don't smoke at all. But even back in the day, I was always around a lot of people who do. And one thing that I always found funny, and it even like bothered me when my kids were little and all my friends' kids were little, we'd be hanging out drinking beers always. And that was never a problem to be drinking beers in front of the kids. But when it came to the weed, you had to hide. And I was like, "God, you've been smoking your whole entire life. And like, why are you hiding from the kids? Like the alcohol is actually, is worse than the weed." And it's just like goes to show it's like a cult thinking, like brainwash that because it's illegal, it's wrong, you know? And because the alcohol is not illegal, it's right. Just because it was made up by man's law, but neither one are wrong. And so I heard a quote just the other last night, I think, and it was the first law of nature is self-defense, right? So like any being when they're being attacked in nature is going to defend itself. It's going to run away, or if it's trying to get eaten or something, it's going to defend itself. And of course, we're not like all the other animals on this planet when it comes to our higher consciousness, and we do have the ability to know the difference between right and wrong. But of course, that's our right to defend ourselves against anyone who's gonna like cause harm to us. And so when it comes to that situation with weed, if if you're standing in Pennsylvania and a cop comes up to you and you're smoking weed, they're gonna try to arrest you. And if they're going to arrest you. They're gonna if you try to defend yourself, good luck. You're gonna get hurt. That's like the least that's gonna happen. You could end up dead if you try to defend yourself just for smoking weed, and you could be like 10 feet away in New York, and you wouldn't even have to defend yourself because it's written on a piece of paper that it's right in New York and it's wrong in Pennsylvania. And then people would always come uh, at me with the comments like, "Oh, just go move to another state if you live in Pennsylvania," or you know, or they never understood that I'm saying that the problem with the whole it's the consciousness that you believe that right and wrong can change depending on what side of the line you're on. That's what I'm trying to say. And everyone just thinks it's about weed. So, you know, what else? There's just another thing that I can mention when it comes to, say, the mafia and the government. Like the mafia always ran numbers, gambling, ran the the government legalized gambling, like online gambling, right, with DraftKings and all that, and uh, the mafia sold weed. Now the government is saying it's okay, like, but you gotta have a license to do it. But back before then, the mafia, the guys would get arrested for that. It was just like running numbers, doing lotto. Like the government gets to do all that. It's legal for them to do it. And they're that's just something that is kind of obvious. It's like it's all right, none of it's wrong. But if the government says we can do it, it's right. If you do it, it's wrong. It doesn't matter. Morality doesn't matter. It's just what we say. It's legal. It's what legal that matters, not the morality that matters, right? So, and one last thing, being as I work on a farm, the whole organic thing, it's like you could be totally organic or to the best of your ability. It's very hard these days with all the poison that's in the freaking air and raining down on us, and it's just in the well water, whatever. I mean, they say if you make less than $5,000, you can say you're organic. But if you make over $5,000, you can't. You have to get certified to be organic. You know, that kind of stuff where um it don't matter. Like you could be totally organic, but you're not allowed to like use that word because it's illegal. It's not more. So there's a whole bunch of stuff like that, like growing food like on your property. People have been fined or stopped from growing their own food on their property, like front yard farming, stuff like that, you know. So I ran into problems with that where they wanted to shut me down. Like I wasn't causing any harm, I'm just growing some food, but it's against the law to grow your own food, you know. Basically, that's what we're getting at. You know, yeah, it does drive me crazy with we found out about there was some uh those chemicals in the well water and that, and the first thing people do is like say, oh well, what are the regulations, the EPA and all that? And it's like, what does the USDA say? Or but it's like, what shouldn't we tell the people that there could be poison in your water? It's like, why should we look at what the government says is okay? Shouldn't the people, don't they have the right to know that? You know? And everyone's just like, well, the government says that it's below the limit or whatever. It's like, but they don't even know shit about it. Like, what's going on with it yet? It's all new, but even to me, that's very disturbing to find out about the forever chemicals. It's in everyone. So I'll pass it off to Jerry.
Yeah, I don't really know what you're talking about, but I don't trust them fuckers. And yeah, I mean, oh, the government says it's below this limit. I mean, I agree with you. They probably don't even know what they're even talking about. Something I should look up. Yeah, and then just a side note, Derek, I didn't think you were rambling, dude. So, if you speak next time, just go through the motions, man. So, I did take some notes, and I'll start off with the etymology, right, from etymology.com about the word law. So, it is rule prescribed by authority, the creator. Also, sometimes a right, an action that causes no harm to other sentient beings, literally something laid down, that which is fixed or set, meaning it can't be changed, no human can change it. So people think morality is subjective. You touched on this, Derek. Examples are not paying taxes is immoral, and then quote, and then I in an ideal society, the law should command obedience, unquote. So pretty much people are in love with their servitude. So I'm going to talk about man's law versus natural law, right? This is based on the slide from Mark Passio. Natural law based upon principles and truth, inherent to creation. Man's law based upon dogmatic beliefs, constructs of the mind. Natural law harmonized with due to knowledge and understanding. Man's law complied with due to fear of punishment. I know you guys talked about this, about, oh, I smoke cannabis in this area, I'm fine, but if I do it maybe 10 feet in another area, now there's gonna be some order followers who are fucking gonna throw me in the bin. So natural law, universal, exists, and applies anywhere in the universe, regardless of location. And yeah, the rest is just really touching on moral relativism, which is going to be part of our next talk. But I read this in an article. So even in our supposed enlightened times, there exist such things as plea bargaining, where the guilty get off on a lesser charge than they should, and the innocent are pressured into pleading guilty if they feel the odds are stacked against them. I know you may talk about this, Chris. So yeah, plea bargaining is neither just nor moral. It saves the courts time and money at the expense of both justice and morality. So there are many examples of unjust and immoral laws around the world even today. That's what the article was saying. And this is kind of related to what you mentioned, Brandon, with the whole codes. I found this pretty interesting that humans, before we had the written laws, that we knew right from wrong. It didn't have to be written. And that whole concept is absolutely just ridiculous. Just, oh, it's written on paper, therefore it's true or it's moral. Like, smoking cannabis is immoral. I mean, people really conflate the idea with doing an action with what could potentially happen by doing that action. An example is drinking. Oh, well, if you drink, you might get into a fight. I mean, but the act of drinking alone is not immoral. So if man laws are moral, they are redundant. And let's see, people are equating man's law with something good, and they're disregarding objective morality. This is what I've come across in my research, just people loving the government, and they really think morality is subjective, and it doesn't make any sense, dude. I mean, it's just to the same point with the cannabis. How can one place say, oh, you can do it, and another place say no? Because legality does not equate to morality. So people are dependent on the government and don't want to grow up. I'll be the first to admit this. I mean, I myself, I'm still getting out of that state where the government is supporting me because, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. My parents, they get government checks and they sometimes like help me. So I do think that in some way I'm still relying on the government, and I'm tired of that. I'm gonna be autonomous, but I think I'll leave it there for now. I'll hand it to you, Chris.
Right on. Thanks, Jerry. I like the things you read there and really good points. Something you said and something Derek said. Yeah, actually, all of you said it in different ways. Made me think about that word jurisdiction. And talking about Mark Passio, he had a good slide and bit about the word jurisdiction. When you look up the word etymologically, jurisdiction basically means you're making up the way things are going to be. To say the law or the declaration of the law. So you're saying that you can say the law, right? Where, and Jerry just read the definition right out of the dictionary of law, and it means something that's immutable or unchangeable. So the whole concept of humans telling other humans that they're going to make the law is like saying, I'm God. I'm going to recreate the whole universe from the very beginning. I'm going to create the laws of the universe and tell you what's right and wrong. I mean, I can see the argument to a lot of things we're talking about here where some people will say, oh, well, in different areas, different rules apply, right? And that's to me where ethics comes in. I think The way I use ethics, we described in a past episode, is a better way to describe how in some areas there might be certain procedures or ways we're going about doing things that would offend people in another place. I remember the first time I went to Mexico, people told me, "Oh, why your males aren't supposed to wear shorts?" It's like, "Oh, really? I'm going to offend somebody if I wear shorts." Or you go into a, Jewish people eating, and you're supposed to wear the little cap. So okay, yeah, there are different procedures and ways we go about things to respect people's customs, right, and traditions. Or a hot climate, you might have different traditions than a cold climate. But the whole difference is when we start punishing people about things or putting down edicts and saying, "Oh, now because you did this or that, because you smoked that plant, or because you drove over that, particular speed limit, now we're going to take something from you," right? And essentially, taking something from someone in any language objectively is stealing, right? And so if you join a club and they say, "Hey, if you do this certain thing, we're going to fine you," you're agreeing to those rules as you join. But these types of rules we're talking about are being made by people that apply universally to everyone, whether they like it or not. And then people will say, "Oh, if you don't like it, why don't you move away?" Okay, where's the place we can move to where we're not having jurisdictions and laws made by other humans claiming to be godlike? That such a thing doesn't exist. So I'm really glad that you guys did a good job laying down morality and what it really is. I essentially like to say, okay, common sense. We all have common sense. And basically, that's what it is. Common sense is like, you wouldn't want somebody punching you. You wouldn't want someone stabbing your kid. You wouldn't want someone, running over your house. You wouldn't do those things to others, right? And that's pretty much all rights are, is just things that you do that are okay, and wrongs are things that we all know are some form of stealing, right? So I'm going to concentrate a little more on the legality thing. And there's this other aspect that hasn't brought up that I wanted to talk about, is that the legal system. And I had an opportunity to work in a court for 7 years almost as a maintenance man. So I'd be back there in the back adjusting the flag and going and hanging the pictures and the judges. And I got to see in their back rooms, I got to see everything behind the scenes and how it all works. And one thing that really struck me over time is that the whole court system is not built for the average individual. Coming in as someone who just off the street, you got a lot working against you. Number one, they're speaking a whole different language in the courtroom than most people were ever taught, and they don't teach you this language in school. You got words like subpoena, affidavit, habeas corpus. Oh, you're gonna like this one, Derek. Voir dire, right? Am I saying voir dire? To speak the truth in French, right? Pro se means for oneself. Ex parte means from one party. Subpoena means under penalty. Most people don't even know that, right? Affidavit means you've sworn, right? But all these are code words, right? They're speaking a whole language that you've never been taught. And then, if you go into court and you have money, backing of money, or other family members that are part of the legal system, you have a total edge on anybody else in that courtroom who doesn't have those history or background or money or financial background. The result of a court case is often based on if things were filed in time, if the right form was used, if the right things were filled out, right? If the right fees were paid. So money often dictates the outcome more than whether something was right or wrong, right on the face of it. If you got more money and you got more time, you can hire a better lawyer. I think it's really kind of scary when you look at who gets paid in a courtroom and who doesn't get paid. And also, if you look at the level of how much they get paid, these judges are getting a really big amount of money compared to your average person, right? 3, 4 times, 5 times what anybody else is making in that courtroom most of the time, depending, of course. You're going to have exceptions to that. So there's this vast money difference where, you got a lot more leverage in this whole system of getting what you want if you've got more money. The other thing, right on the face of it, if you look at the courtroom, oftentimes they're built like in this grandiose way, tall ceilings, ornate wood that, a lot of people would never be able to afford in their own home, for instance. And you've done some kind of crime. Now you're sitting there in this fancy oak chair that you wouldn't even be able to afford in your own house. and you're being grilled by someone who's paid to be there, right? And the only person you got on your side, the defense attorneys, they're always overloaded with cases because there's not as much financial backing, right? And so the courtroom is it's right away like making you feel small if you're a regular person. You don't understand their language. They're wearing these robes. That judge comes in a robe. They say all stand, and he marches in. Everybody's supposed to stand up. It becomes almost like a religious ritual, the way things are going about. And don't get me wrong, if you want to have an organized meeting, you need to have um, some kind of discipline to where things happen and timing, right? You're like, okay, let's start. You talk, you talk. But this is a whole nother level with the black robes. Everything's very specific. The tassels on the flags, that seal on the wall. It's like the gang sign. It's like the big gang sign posted right up in front. It's saying this is about authority, right? We own this courtroom. We got our gang sign right up in the middle. Over here is the state gang sign. Over here is the main Fed gang sign. And so from the second you walk in, you're very small in this situation. They got all this gang, the bailiffs right there armed, right? And so from the very beginning, you're the little guy. The lawyers are making money off people's misery and pain. That's literally their job. If you're, dealing with divorce, dealing with family problems, your job is to make money off other people's misery and pain. And they have to pay you to do it if you want to go through the system. So the whole thing is based on money and financial influence and intimidation from the beginning in a religious type way that makes you feel small, that makes them feel holy because they know all these fancy words, and you're lost and you're scared in this maze. You're walking down hall to number J27, and they got all these rules and regulations that you don't understand. There's armed people wearing robes, right? Like, it's very overpowering, and it's very it's all about the whole system of forcing authority more than it is even close to talking about what's really right or common sense, objective, right and wrong. So I'm just going to say in one sentence, the legal system is not built on laws. It's built on language, symbols, costumes, rituals, hierarchies, and procedures. And those are all based on owning other human beings, the belief that that's a good thing to do. And that's not a religion we should be propping up, congratulating, or taking part of any more than we possibly need to, from my point of view. I'll pass it back to Brandon.
When Derek was talking, it was a song that came up in my mind. The song's called Got Racks on Racks on Racks. And I was thinking, man, we all got tax on tax on tax, got tax on tax on tax, got tax on tax on tax. Yeah, because we tax out the ass, man. Got tax fucking everywhere. But Chris, how we was talking about like the whole religious, like connotation, it all comes from, like canon law, like Vatican law. Like that's where a lot of the basis of our court system, comes from. And one of the things that, oh man, some big truck is backing up. One of the things about the court system and legality and man's law is it gets you to deceive yourself, almost like a form of propaganda, into subscribing to this notion of privileges. And a privilege is something that is allowed by authority, something which you are allowed to do. But yet, they never really explain to you what rights are, because rights can never be taken away. Rights are objective. Rights are always there as long as you exist. The only way for your rights to not exist is for you to literally not exist. So, but when you have a privilege is something that's handed to you by someone in power, by someone in a robe, someone in a position, someone with the, 2 letters and a dot in front of their name. Privileges are about benefits and advantage. It's about power. And then too, when you look at the whole court system and privileges and, being in an advantage, because like Chris said, if you have a monetary advantage, you go into any court system, you're going to have an advantage. Back in the day, it was do the crime, do the time. Now it's do the crime, pay the fine. Because if you have enough money, you can get off of any so-called, crime. But another thing about these privileges is they're based on fear. Like Jerry said, like Chris said, it's about obedience. If the, if the court systems were truly just, why would we need to align our will with their will? Because that's what happens when someone's forcing you to be obedient. It's using a form of coercion to say you align your will to my will. If it was something that was truly just, something that was truly moral, something that was truly good, why would there be any means of coercion? Why would there be any means to break one's will to align to your will? And that's the thing, is when you're dealing with true rights, when you're dealing with true natural law, you're dealing with true fairness all around. There's not going to be any advantages. There's not going to be any, individual, benefits. The only advantage and benefits are for everybody. You have true equality. You never have true equality under any court system, under any man-made law. No, true equality is going to come from the consciousness and the knowledge and the behaviors and the care that's put back into actual reality so that everyone can reap those benefits. And then two, hell abundance, hell natural law rights are all about hell abundance. There's more than enough here to go around for everyone, And then two, the objectiveness. That's what people don't understand, is seeing things from the bigger picture. One of the egoic things that this man-made system has done is it has forced us to it has forced our egos out to where we are leading with our egos. This whole wanting to create law, this whole false action for thousands and thousands of years has been embedded with us. It's almost like our egos have run amok because we think we can go and run around and do things without consequences. Well, we think we can enslave others. Well, we think we can arbitrate law. And it's like there hasn't been anyone to stop that, to say no, I'm going to stop you from doing that. So then it just keeps happening and happening and happening and happening. Then the ego gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we have people not wanting to just control the court systems. They want to control everything in life. They want to control her relationships. They want to control family dynamics. They want to control everything. So this right here has had like a deeper negative fluctuation in our in our psyche, And then earlier I mentioned, the like the boundaries that have been blurred, because boundaries are a part of reality. Boundaries are what separate things or what distinguish things. Boundaries can also be what give things shape and form. So things can materialize. So the body itself is a literally boundary. So we need boundaries, but when you go into the court system, there are no boundaries because everything has a price on it. And like Chris said, everything has a price on it. And that's the whole thing about the court system. Everything has a price on it. Like Jordan Maxwell said, they took crime and they monopolized it. That's why when you go to jail, you get a ticket, anything, there's always a fine because they already know how much money each bad behavior is worth. And they penalize you and they make money off of you and they live off of you. So it's like it's feeding off of us, it's feeding off our behaviors and it's living off our behaviors, It's this it's this parasite that's feeding off our bad behaviors, And legality is not about wanting to grow up, because what you are doing at the end of the day is you're staying psychologically, spiritually, and morally stunted. Because why else would you constantly keep looking for others to tell you what to do, to look for authority to tell you what to do, to look to a judge, an attorney, look for someone else to represent you? These are all childish ways of being. This is a childish mindset. And how like Jim said, you find out there's a poison being implemented to you and your loved ones, and your first answer is, well, what did the government say about it? What kind of bullshit is that? It just shows the conditioning, man. It shows the fucked up psychology to where our first reaction is not, man, get this poison out of my system, or I should go out and use self-defense to stop this from happening. No, our first reaction is, oh, what did the government, authorities say about that? Oh, well, they're only giving us small dosages, so, so it can't be that bad. It's all of these excuses to try to cope and to try to justify their immoral behaviors. And this is the problem. This is the problem. And then the last thing that I'm going to lead off with is legality is just based off of fear. That's all it is. It's based off of fear. Nobody likes going into the court system for any reason. I mean, that's all you have right there. Who ever gets excited about going to court? Nobody. No one gets excited about going to court. Even if it's for the smallest thing, no one likes going to court to pay a fine. No one likes going to court to be a fucking witness. No one likes going to be on fucking jury duty. No one likes going to fucking court because everyone knows it's fucking bullshit and no one fucking likes the shit. But yet people still tolerate it. People still deal with the shit because they don't have the fucking balls to stand up and say no. Because if enough of us did do that, then we would have the true natural court system of natural law, of true justice. And it wouldn't just be a just us society like we have now in the just us. It ain't no justice, it's just us. It's the haves and the have nots. It's the ones who were in the system and in those positions of power, and they use that to monopolize for their own benefits. And then all of the others who don't have, well, you just get stepped on. And that's the unfortunate thing, and that's why we have gone down this road to disarray, to confusion, toward chaos, because we are trying to stir this ship, blinded, and we are trying to stir this ship by putting forth unsolidified foundation when it comes to man's law. That foundation has so many cracks in it. It is bound to fail, doomed to fail. In order for it to be a true foundation, it has to be solid, it has to be integral, and it has to be willing to subdue the elements of time. And that can only be based in true natural law principles, objective morality, true care. All right, Derek.
Who's really got that true care out there? Agape and the generative principle stemming from that heart-based intelligence. And to bring it back to relevance of, I'm glad you touched upon like the so-called privilege and all this stuff. And, hearing this from so many people over the past decade or three of like white privilege and all this stuff. And it can be such like pettiness, a tit for tat, crabs in a bucket type of shit when they don't even address the actual perpetrators that are getting off on this quote unquote fucking privilege. They should be considering it more like white collar privilege in regards to what Brandon was talking about of, how there's so many people that get slaps on the wrist that are causing severe damage to the environment, society, and people. And they get away with it because they're in on the whole scheme of things. They might be part of the folks that pull the strings of the puppets, the politicians. Politic, it's a multifaceted, blood-sucking fucking parasite, right? And they're pulled by strings. You could see like lobbyists as some of those strings that are being pulled by the upper hands and the upper hands and the hidden hands behind that. But white privilege. Take it to the fucking Caucasus Mountains. Take it to the Caucasoid motherfucking Sumerian Draconian Empire that created all these bullshit religions and patriarchal systems of domination and control. We need to get to the causal factors of why the fuck these things are even implemented within society and within the human psyche. We have to purge the fucking parasitical mind viruses and all this shit. And it's festered up within so many fucking world leaders and shit like that, and young people that are aspiring to be up in that stuff. I mean, look at the college campuses around America. Even Truthstream Media did a great documentary on just all these fraternities and sororities. They're just grooming these young kids to be up in positions of power and shit like that. And of course, they create rules and regulations to, create and and extend this power differential, because they have that knowledge differential. So they want that more power because, yeah, as Brandon mentioned, they're in fear. They're in fear of losing their control and all this shit. And so they're coming up with all types of ways and booby traps for us through legal systems, legalese, and all these other aspects that can be so fucking Hegelian, right? Put a psyop in the mix, make the public react, and then you kind of have your proposed ideas to hand them out. So problem, reaction, solution, and their solutions are not proper revolution, and neither was this motherfucker. And yeah, people still believing in Che Guevara was a good guy, might have that primate mind state type of thing, because wow, he led a revolution to more communism or something like that. So there's context that needs and nuance that needs to be really thought about in regards to words. Revolution can be for the good or bad, I guess. What's the who initiated this revolution? What's the revolution going on within your own consciousness, first and foremost? But yeah, take it to the light bulb conspiracy or planned obsolescence and all this shit, where in the past they've made things illegal and legalized things where we have to have these certain meters for us to be have to pay for certain things that are free and abundant within this world and environment. Talking about like free energy and things like that. It's illegal for us to be self-sufficient. Unfortunately, they want to put a meter on our water, our electricity, and all this stuff because they need to make a profit off of us. Gets into the petrochemical Rockefeller Institute and fucking with our health as well. Pharmakia, that mafioso motherfuckers of sick care. They're not so healthy or holistic, while at the same time calling homeopathy, what's their word? A bunch of quackery, while they, put out those poisonous quack scenes, needlecraft bullshit. Anyways, it's legal for them to fucking poison us, but it's illegal for us to, go for alternative fucking methods. The system is so fucking ass backwards, right? So yeah, laws are passed and things made illegal intentionally for oligarchs and the politics that they get kickbacks from via lobbyists and all this other fucking backdoor bullshit, and we're all suffering and paying for it through our health and our finances and all this shit. It's insane. So there's so much toxicity permitted, while wholesome ways of life become suffocated into the minority. And I'm thinking about you, Jim. You touched on, and it's the same in France. I go to farmers markets, and I talk to them, and they go about, organic means no pesticides, but they don't label it organic because they'll have to pay 5,000 euro out the ass to have that fucking label. So they just say non traité, like non-treated stuff or whatever. But here's so blatant, you see in every store, you have your little mini section of organic food, when everything else has, pesticides or chemicals or bullshit preservatives, whatever the fuck. When things should be labeled as such, and just regular organic food should just be like food. This is food. It doesn't need a fucking label. It doesn't need a fucking sticker. It doesn't need some fucking wax appeal, whatever the hell they're putting over, produce that's, showcased in stores, like all this fucking shit. Goddamn. Anyways, and they pass laws to make this shit perpetuated and all this stuff. It's crazy. And it's like, it's illegal for us to even have self-defense, to sometimes even speak out about it, or, I mean, yeah, we can boycott these things. We can vote with our dollar and just avoid these things completely, and support folks that are just doing it correctly. So, what's up, England? I know it's fucking weird as hell that there's people getting arrested for a mean comment or tweet that they put on the internet, while criminals get away with murder and rape. Make it make fucking sense. No, you can't, because it's just going to drive people insane. It's just, they're telling us that, they're fucking inadequate and they're just completely illogical. It doesn't make any fucking sense at all. And people need to rely on themselves at this point. We need to start forming like real fucking militias and neighborhood watches and shit. If things are this fucking bad, you know what I mean? And even in America, what did they have? Like these teen takeovers and whatever the fuck? Like, what the fuck is going on? So, anyways, but yeah, I thought it was illegal in regards to like having the church and the state together, when Christianity has been in bed with America politics for forever, it seems. But they're allowing all these mosques and all this stuff going on, and the culture, religious wars. It's just like they're trying to stir that shit the fuck up. They're trying to really get the Armageddon software kicked into a lot of people, and the reckoning and the fucking bullshit holy war crap. That's just a bunch of ancient ostensible script. They wrote a fucking script and they seeded it into the consciousness, 2,000 fucking years ago, uh, for these end time fucking bullshits. And it's still being played out because people have such fucking religious fervor that, they can't see it from that, outside view that Brandon was talking about. We need to get that objective perspective on reality and morality, especially. There is objective morality that needs to be aligned to, and you're not going to get it through the government. You're not going to get it through fucking religion and all these fucking bullshit ideological institutions. So, yeah, I'll sum it up with one last slide from the great Mark Passio, because it all goes back to natural law and aligning to that we've been alluding to this whole time. That man's law seems to go against all too often, sometimes disguising as, these are, when human beings in the aggregate live in harmony with natural law and therefore moral, they become and remain free. When human beings in the aggregate live in opposition to natural law and are therefore immoral, they become and remain enslaved. Passio refers to this dynamic of natural law as the law of freedom. And Chris Nelson put out a great slide on that as well. I included it. And it goes a little something like this. As aggregate morality increases, aggregate freedom increases. As aggregate morality declines, aggregate freedom declines. Have you guys done a pulse check on the state of the world, the state of where you're at on the map? How's the level of freedom going? How are you guys feeling about the price of life and like the quality of it and all this shit, right? So the higher the level of freedom within the collective consciousness, or sorry, the more relies on the level of morality. So voila. That's what we strive for. That's what we've been trying to just talk about and educate others in these videos all day. So yeah, you got that natural law or what? All right, Jim. Go for it.
Nice. Yeah, man. That's I'm just sitting here listening to you all, and I'm wondering, like, do we come across like, are we like we're complaining, or are we like commiserating? You know, of course we're judging, um, which we all, it is necessary, like, but are we coming across that way, and then that like people's like that turns people off with like Derek, you just said, we're trying to educate people. The most important number one thing is that the consciousness creates reality. So we're trying to point out the belief system that is and that consciousness of like that right and wrong is just gets to be made up if it's legal or not, is causing so much so much crime, so much violence in the world. And I think that we can change. Like none of us would be here talking about it if we didn't understand that like people aligning with morality will make the world so much better place. I think it's worth doing. It's worth speaking about. I could get caught up in complaining about it. I don't want to do that. I want to create uh ways for people to think about morality, right? Um, and that's why we're talking about this stuff. It's like to get people to think. It's like, why? How could that be? Like, why is this right here and wrong there? Like in the jurisdiction. And like I had recently gone to court, and I was surprised at myself. It's just a small village court. There's like 100 villages where I live on Long Island. It's like I can get a ticket in any of these places, but there was a one point I was there over an hour, but at one point the judge left, and then when he came back, they said, "All rise," and I fucking stood up. I was like, "Oh shit!" I didn't want to stand up for this fucking guy, but like it happened. I was like, "Oh no!" Like I was part of that group, like those like group experiments where like people go with the crowd. It happened so fast. I was like, "Oh," I was like, "When you talk about equal rights." Like, who is this guy that I got to stand up for him? Like, no one's standing up for me. You got a guy with a gun telling everyone in the room to rise for the guy in the robe who's gonna take your money for something that you didn't even do was wrong. I mean, some of the people in they did do wrong things, but I didn't, and they even let me go. But I mean, there's other situations where like I always get seatbelt tickets, and I saw other people ahead of me, like you were saying before, they're like, all right, you just have to pay this much today and we'll let you go. And they're like, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. They're thanking the person who's stealing the money from them. You know, like well, my tickets were like around $2,000 and I ended up paying $600. But I wasn't like, thank you, thank you. I was like, that was still $600. And anyway, that's just the cult mentality is like people are just like thanking the person who's stealing from them. The equal rights, like the civil rights. I have a friend who's Chinese, and he was going through a lot of problems with racism, and he said he wanted to become a lawyer. I was like, dude, you can't become a lawyer, and it's like that's that's like the system where like uh no one talks about equal rights. But you get to vote for people who are above you. You think that that's like you get the right to do that? Like that's a good thing? No, like that's true equality. That's because someone had mentioned that earlier. It made me think of that. Like there is no equality with government. You don't get equality from government. You don't go to the government to get equality. That's not what right? That's not legality doesn't create equality. Morality does. So I'll pass it to Jerry.
You are spot on at the end that morality creates equality. So thank you for that. I've also been guilty of maybe doing things unconsciously, kind of following the crowd. So it's one of the things you have to be conscious of. I think that's why we're talking about this, so people are aware of it. And as far as the complaining goes, yeah, it might come off as complaining, but I'm just doing what I think people should know. So I don't intend it to be as complaining. I'm solutions oriented, but I'm gonna go ahead and continue with my notes. So pretty much, I have some examples of legal but immoral acts, and this is apartheid in South Africa, which included legally sanctioned racial segregation, Nazi Germany's against the Jews in World War II, drone strikes resulting in the death of children and innocent civilians, right? I mean, we're talking about Iran and just the whole Israel thing with the US, wars in general, abortion. Here's one that, I'll throw it out there, circumcision. What about factory farming? Here's one that I'm, questioning. Surveillance is like, what's going on with that? And read a history book. You'll find plenty of sources there. And I'm going to talk about moral acts that are illegal. So same-sex marriage, prostitution, and then basically the civil rights movement, MLK, I want to say, the Gandhi protests, people thinking they have authority over other people, taxing them. And then I'm going to get into solutions real quick. So here's a quote I read. Everything is a balancing act. Everyone acting without regard to others is dangerous, and everyone being viewed as mere cogs in a societal machine is dangerous. Life is largely about striking balances between different trade-offs. Few things are pure and beneficial when taken to the exclusion of all other considerations. If we refuse to act out of fear of finding ourselves on a slippery slope, we're already on one. So I would say natural law is one of those things that, I mean, you don't want to balance out moral activities with immoral ones. So you want to be 100% moral, but comments like these is what makes me think that there's actually people out there who are, they want to be moral. So I think there's people out there that, they see the system for what it is, and I don't know, it's a sign for me of relief. And last thing I have is another quote. If we are to meet the challenge of working together to take care of our own, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat that. If we are to meet the challenge of working together to take care of our one world house, we will need to move beyond merely asking what is legal and focus on doing that which is moral in relation to each other and all of life. How's it to you, Chris?
Thanks, Jerry. Yeah, well, it all gets real personal when you get sucked into it. I've known lots of people that have been sucked into some kind of legal courtroom situation, and they're forced to start learning how to deal with it, right? And luckily, I've been able to largely stay out of, other than my job where I went in courtrooms to fix the furniture and such. I guess in terms of what do we take away from all this, I like what you just were saying, Jerry. The perspective is really important, and what Derek said about natural law. being the base understanding, I think a lot of people, it hasn't occurred to them, certain ideas have never been suggested. And here's one I'm going to suggest that we haven't brought up. The end goal of all this courtroom proceedings and legality is, how do we deal with the problem or the problem child? Well, a big part of it, like Brandon said, tax them, fine them, right? A big, huge other aspect of it is this thing we call jail. The end all solution for all the problem children, all the people that have messed up in society, right? We're putting them into jail, which is actually a form of torture. And we're all accepting torture as a solution to day-to-day problems. A lot of those problems don't actually cause harm to other people. There's a lot of people sitting in jail. There have been people sitting in jail, like Jim was pointing out with marijuana plant. And think about that. What, 20, 30 years before that, they made alcohol illegal for, I don't know how long that lasted, right? But there were people sitting in jail for drinking alcohol during that period of time. Victimless crimes, never paid all your tickets, right? And you're actually literally, your life freedom's being taken away by a gang, a mafia that's controlling this power of what they call law, that is really them making up rules and enforcing them through torture and taxing people, stealing, different forms of stealing. So maybe someone out there listening to this has never occurred to them that jail is a form of torture. And I hope that people give that some thought. You know what it means when you actually think about it, that if we were going to be more understanding of actual self-defense and actual personal sovereignty, that means there'd be a lot more lenience for someone attacked you and you killed them. Too freaking bad. Shouldn't attack somebody, right? A lot more things would have to be dealt with in a more harsh manner. You know, maybe people do need to get beaten up sometimes so they learn a lesson. And maybe the other people said, well, they asked for it, right? So there is a case and a situation for having a formal setting where we sit down and discuss issues when there was a fight, for instance. Why did it happen? And who all was involved? The actual word court comes from an ancient word that just means enclosed area, a courtyard, basically. And that's basically what we do need. In any society, we can imagine a good society, we need a form of sitting down and communicating when a problem is happening and what's going to be the result, what's going to be the punishment, what's going to be, how are we going to deal with these people that aren't getting it, right? That are doing things that are wrong. Well, the best way to deal with those people is right in the moment. And if people understand self-defense and people as a group understand that we have to chip in and help people that are not able the way we are, you know, lacking physical abilities or getting up there in years, or they're an innocent child, right? A lot of these things are common sense and obvious, and people know it deep in their heart out on the street day to day. But when you get in these courtroom legal situations, all that's out the window, and it's all about all these other rules, regulations, and laws. So we all have to little by little start taking ourselves out of that BS system of that's really based on money and power and who's got it and who doesn't, and working towards, well, what would actually be right in my own heart? What is my actual conscience telling me? And how can we start to implement in our own lives, avoiding unnecessarily getting involved in these systems that are essentially evil, systems of torture and systems of robbery. And obviously we can't just end them all at once because people aren't ready. They still believe in the system of authority, but we can begin talking about it. We can begin explaining to people why these things don't make sense, even when we're the sore thumb in the room over and over. And I've been that so many times. And you get in endless arguments with individuals that go nowhere. So you're forced to get into these type of situations, broadcasting your ideas online, Facebook, writing books, writing articles, writing songs, trying to explain to people, you know, ask the question, what is a right? Where does a right come from? You know, does it come from a book? Does it come from a pen? Well, then how did we have rights before books or pens were invented? You know, what did people do before we had these authoritarian structures, structures, right? Anarchy would actually be the default condition of living under natural law, with the natural consequences that would come. And some of them would be harsh, right? Harsher than what we're used to in the lifestyle we live. So we have to kind of stretch our minds and consider what would that mean and what are we actually, working towards in the future. But clearly, I would say if you've listened to this episode and what everybody has to say, it seems pretty obvious to me that our current legality structure has very little to do with morality um, in its most essential and real sense of harming others and the good that you would want to do into the world being done to yourself. The golden rule essentially has nothing to do with legality. Legality is a structure that keeps authoritarian belief system in place and gives people a false sense of security that there is a fairness, which there is not. And on the subject of fairness, I just want to send people to, I did a presentation for Freedom Under Natural Law 5. Check out freedomundernaturallaw.com. And I had a presentation there called Finding Balance in the Apocalypse. And I talked about the symbolism of the woman with the blindfold holding the sword. And this is something that we see symbolizing justice, right? And the blindfold is supposed to symbolize impartiality. And the sword, can symbolize the word, putting down, making action, taking a solution. So clearly, we all seek this deep in our heart, a way to make things right, a way to make things just. And so ask yourself, really, is that really what we're doing? Or is this really more based on power, money, authority, and repeating these rituals of intimidation? And so I hope those questions spread far and wide. Share this episode with others.
Chris, real
Bring up a
quick.
question where you can.
Hey,
Go ahead, Brandon.
real quick before we leave, I looked this up. So you have legal. The main word in legal is leg. When you have a leg, that means you stand on something. A leg is also something that bends. Well, when you look at the legal system, it is the main thing that people stand upon, but it is one of the main things that's bending us and sending us in a direction that we don't want to go that way. So again, it always falls down to the words that we use, and that's why when you go to the court system, they tell you don't have a leg to stand upon, because they are the leg. They are the legal system.
Yeah, you're just going to slide down that leg and wind up under the boot at the bottom. It's too sad. Thanks, Brandon, for that. And thank you all, gentlemen, for bringing your intelligent minds and thoughts and hearts to this conversation. And it's great to be part of the One Great Work Warriors. And we'll see you guys next time with our next topic in about a month. Thanks for coming.
Peace. Cheers, gentlemen.
Warriors out.